I want to show you this little chart real quickly because a lot of our advanced jewelry construction would be like in the form of necklaces or pendants like this one. And the first goal would be to realize how long you want your necklace or where you want your pendant to be worn. Necklaces, it's good to know, go from about 14 inches as a choker all the way down to 33, which I think there's a fancy name for that. But anyway, you can see by this little chart that there's all these different increments, and it's just really good to know what you're shooting for when you want to wear a pendant or a necklace. This came from Creative Journey Studios, but you can get all kinds of charts like this off the internet that will really help guide you. So with that in mind, let's take a look first at how to do a sliding knot or a slip knot. Now this is like a big focal bead, mokumegane bead, that rides nicely on this cord. And this is the kind of bead that you might want to wear this as a choker, or you might want to wear it longer. And so a sliding knot, which works like this, you just grab the knot and pull, helps you to automatically shorten or lengthen a pendant or a necklace so that you can wear it a myriad of different ways. So at its longest, the two knots would touch each other. And at its shortest, you know, the knots would fall somewhere up into here. Now, when you're doing a sliding or a slip knot, it's really nice to have rounded cords. So this is a fake leather cord or leatherette cord. It's round in profile. Another way that these types of knots work really well is on this kind of cord. I'm going to think of the name of this in a second, but you can see how well the knots slide up and down on rounded cords, like so. And so you want to pick out leather or round cords for slip knots. So let's take a look at how to make that kind of a knot. And I have just a scrap right here, and I find that it's a really, really good idea to practice on scraps. I have lots of scraps in my studio, and anytime I learn a new knot, I just pull out a piece of scrap and I practice on that cord. So we're going for this slip knot. Now also I need you to know that the only way I learned how to do all this knotting is by doing research. And so you can research all kinds of knots online. This type of slip knot, these type of Chinese button knots, it's all there for you online. And you can just do the same as I've done and research that and acquaint yourself with different styles of knots. So for this slip knot, when you measure out your cord to make a necklace, you need to allow 4 extra inches for each knot. And so for these two knots, I had to allow 8 extra inches, 4 inches for each knot on the end of my extreme, you know, my longest length of cord. So you got to do a little math there and figure out how long you want it to be. For this one, what you do is you fold a little V about 4 inches from the tail of your string, like so. You fold a little V like that, and you want your little V to be over. So I have the left end with the V, and then the right end would be my functioning end. So I'm going to fold the V and hold it against this cord. Okay? Then what I do is I take the tail of the V, let me position this one more time, fold that in half, and I'm putting the tail of the V this way away from me. This would be the other end of my cord, put the V right on top, and then what I do is I take the tail of the V and I'm going to wrap it around one full time, 2, 3, and I'm going to go one more, and I've got 3 little wraps right around the cord. All the cords. You're actually wrapping it around itself and the pulling cord. Then I'll take the tail of and put it back through the V. Then you want to tighten all of these up as tightly as possible. You're tightening that V down. Now you can go around and around and around more times depending on the style that you want your knot to look. And I'm also going to pull the end of that V. And so that's what gives you this sliding knot. Okay? So your pendant would be on here, and then you would go over here and tie the same thing. So if I start on this side with the V, going the other way, I have the V, I lay it right on top of my functioning cord, and then I would just go the other way. 1, 2, 3. This time let's go around one more time so you can see the difference in how the knots look. I'm doing this fairly tightly. I'm holding it with I'm holding that V constantly in place over that cord. Okay? And then when I get all the way back around, I'm going to loop back through here and come through that V and pull that tightly. Then I'm cinching each of those knot wraps up. And see how my V, what I was calling the V, is real loose right now? I can tighten that by pulling on the appropriate cord. So there I have 2 slip knots, and that's what you need for a necklace or even for a bracelet. You're going to need 2 slip knots to make it fully adjustable. Then you can just go in and trim these ends. Now you want to make super sure that you've got this as tight as possible so that your tail end doesn't slide back out through here. You can either trim this close, or you could super glue a little bead on there. As long as you don't get super glue on your functioning knot and you only get it on the cord and the bead, that would be an attractive way to finish it off. Or you could trim these as shortly as possible. Like I said, this works great for bracelets, for pendants, necklaces. On this style, I left little tails sticking out there, but you could either glue a little bead on there, or you could even glue this to that final loop that we pushed it through. But again, make super sure that you don't get any super glue on your functioning knots or on your pulling cords so that you're able to adjust your necklace. So that is a slip knot. Next, let's take a look at how to use stranded wire. Some people call this tiger tail. This particular one by Beetle On is called bead stringing wire. It comes in lots of colors. This is a bronze. It comes in all kinds of like neutral colors to go with your bead work. They come in different strands as well. But essentially, this is not stretchy at all. It's a coated stranded wire. It's very, very strong. So, for example, here, it works really well with a heavier pendant and with like a cord that is really heavily beaded, like so. A situation where you want to know that your beads are going to stay in place. Maybe you're going to use a functional finding like this one, like a loop style finding. Something you're going to be working in metal or mixed media, glass. It's going to have a little weight to it, and you want to make sure that it all holds together. So that is when you would want to use stranded wire. Now, because stranded wire, it's hard to tie knots in. Knots aren't going to really hold, and it's not at all stretchy. We use a different device for finishing it called crimp beads. And I want to show you how to assemble a crimp bead situation and how to finish it. So I have my whole necklace strung, and this is going to be a shorter necklace. Now, incidentally, for travel, I went ahead and put a tiny crimp bead right here. And a crimp bead just means it starts out round, and then you smash it flat to the wire with pliers. And that enabled me to travel this necklace so that it got here without the beads falling off. So crimp beads can also be used in that way to like hold space and define, boundaries of rows of beads. So to finish it off and to attach our finding on the ends so that we can have a clasp, what you want to do first is add another crimp bead to the wire. So I'm just going to go in here and pick one up, and I'm selecting, everything I'm doing is kind of in a bronze or copper color, and I'm trying to make everything match. The first thing you want to check is that you have the appropriate size crimp bead for your wire. And the way I do that is I pick the crimp bead up with one end, and then I slide the other wire just through to make sure. You have to be able to put 2 strands of wire easily through this crimp, and you know that you have the right size crimp bead, because they do come in a lot of different sizes. You can see in this little collection, they're different sizes. If you can get it on 2 strands and it moves freely or even a little bit tightly, that's fine. You just don't want it to be really loose on there. So now I'm going to pull 1 wire back out. I have my crimp bead in place that I've selected, and I want to slide this all the way down to my finished bead cord. Next, what I'll do is apply one of my clasp ends. So I'm putting the loop on first. I'm going through the loop, and then I want to go back through that crimp bead with the tail end. Okay, so I have crimp bead, I have loop cord going all the way through, and then back through the crimp bead. Then I'm going to skip, because I've already flattened that crimp bead, I can just skip over it, and I'm going to bury this wire in some of these other E beads that I have just to hide the tail end of it. I'm going to go back through those 5 beads right there. See? Now the reason I did that is it kind of gives me this little handle of beads here to pull on. I can hold these beads steady and pull the loop taut, bringing the loop clasp all the way down to there. And I have my looped clasp right up next to that crimp bead that I just showed you how to insert. Next, I'll take a pair of pliers. So I want flat nose pliers. You could use a pair like this, or you could use a pair like this. Now at this point the curve doesn't really matter. I just like that these flat nose pliers have a smaller nose, and that gives me the ability to, I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to grab that crimp bead with those pliers and I'm going to smash it. And you're just basically smashing a little metal crimp flat, and that will hold your tiger tail or your beading wire in place. Now what I like to do is test it, so I'm just going to grab onto my, the rest of my necklace here and pull, and it feels super secure. If it doesn't feel secure, you'd want to just go back in there and smash that flat. Okay? Now that I have some tail buried down here in these beads, I'm going to finish it off by trimming that with these flat nose wire cutters. I'm just going as close as I can and just pop that off. Okay? Let's do this side too. I'm just going to pick up that same crimping bead, string it all the way down, put my bar on here. This is the other side of my clasp. Go back through the crimp, skip the flattened crimp that's already in place, go through those 5 E beads, and pull. Pull the whole thing. I'm pulling the loop, the bar down now. Okay? That looks really nice. Now I'll just go in here and flatten this. There's one more note I want to make. The way these loop and toggles work is that this bar, as it flattens out against the necklace cord, it makes it thin enough to go through the loop, and then it flattens back out and is secure. So when you're designing a necklace like this, you want to make sure the end of your necklace has sort of a very narrow section so that this bar can lay flat against it. If you had this really big bead or other big beads up here, the bar might not ever lay flat enough to go through the loop. And that's very important with the loop and toggle, so that it works easily and you can put it on all by yourself. So those are great for bracelets and for necklaces as well. And now I'll just trim this one off. Oh, I didn't test it. Let's test it and make sure. Yeah, feels nice and tight. Okay, then I'll just trim the end. So a lot of the tips I'm giving you here could be translated to necklaces or pendants or bracelets or anklets. You can always adapt whatever I'm showing you, even to earrings and to other types of jewelry, as long as you know the basics. Next, let's take a look at making dangling elements that could hang off of a bead or like a keychain. This is sort of a really long, dramatic necklace piece that would be worn really long, and so I have a long bead and I wanted to make it even more dramatic by adding these dangling elements. This is a similar situation where I've created a tube bead and made it into a pendant by making a wire fitting that goes all the way through. So let's take a look at how that's done, and how you might want to incorporate that into some of your designs. So I have a large bead here, and I've selected just some different things that I thought matched it pretty well because it's mostly pink and green and black. And I've picked out some head pins that are in a copper color to match. And then also I have some wire here. I guess this is really more rose gold, but I thought the rose gold complemented that well. So this is a head pin. To create these little dangle elements, you can use head pins or eye pins. This one's a head pin. It has a flat head on the end. This one, which I've already created, has an eye on the end, but they're the exact same thing. They come in lots of metal colors. They come in different lengths. This is a 1-inch head pin, and this is a 2-inch head pin. So whatever you're comfortable with is generally available. So what I like to do is start with a seed bead, and I'll put that on the very end of the head pin. Now the reason I do a seed bead is I work with a lot of glass and metal beads, and the hole size in beads can be quite inconsistent. So that seed bead not only adds a tiny detail of color, but it also ensures that the crystal bead, the hole in the crystal bead isn't larger than the head, and that will hold it right in place. Okay, so I'll put together a couple of these and we'll go from there. Oh, I want a seed bead on there first. Seed beads come in so many colors too, and so you can really customize, you know, the look of your pieces. So I just threaded the seed bead and then the crystal bead on. Next, I want to take some round nose pliers, because what I want to do is twist a loop up here right above each crystal, similar to how this one is done. And round nose pliers come in a variety of ways. This size of pliers has round on both sides, and you can see they're tapered so that you can kind of gauge the size of the loop you're twisting by where you're at on the tapered, you know, parts there. This sort of round nose plier has 3 different sizes of round, and then this part is round as well, so that when you pinch wire between there, this accentuates the roundness of the loop you're twisting. There's also one more style that shows you can do a round on this side, but this side is going to be flattened, and this would be for a very specific purpose. My 2 favorites are either the double round or the round with the arch side on the other side. So I think I'll show you how to do it with this one. When you're twisting a loop, you're going to need probably, I'd say this is about 3/4 of an inch. I usually go with that much. I don't go with much less. And the reason is because I like to twist my loops around more than once so that things don't slide off. So I'm going to grab this as close as I can to the end and just start twisting. And then as I've made one full revolution, I make sure the little tip of the wire is right beside the wire, and I just keep twisting. And now I've done 2 twists all the way down to the top of the bead. And then I would just grab that loop and go back, rotate it back toward the bead so that that loop ends up positioned right above the bead. Okay? Let's take a look at doing that with this type of pliers. I'm just going to put the very tippy tip end of the wire in there and start turning. And this takes a little bit more hand rotation is what I find with these bigger pliers. It makes the bigger loop even on the smallest setting. But then what I'll do is I'll take the tip of that arch and put it right above the bead and put that back in the loop, and then just rotate it backwards a bit just to make sure I get that loop, you know, centered over the top of the bead. Okay, so I have a few of these prepared. Next, what I want to do is add jump rings to these, and so I've got a little jump ring kit here, and this is probably about a 4 or 5 millimeter jump ring right here. I'll need one of those for each of my little dangle beads. Those 2 are stuck together, so we'll just get a different one. And that one was smaller. I'll just lay a few out there. Jump rings come in lots and lots of sizes, and this is a nice little kit for having all the varieties. I'll show you how to open and close these real quick. So what you want to do to open and close jump rings is use flat nose pliers. And this is a bent flat nose plier, which I just kind of like. And just, you can grab it with 2 pliers or 1 plier in your fingernails. And you twist jump rings open from side to side. You don't ever stretch jump rings open, you always twist them, because jump rings are constructed with a memory, and so if you stretch them open, you'll lose that memory that's built in, but if you twist them side to side, then they will want to go right back where they were. So I'm going to add 1 jump ring to each of my little dangle creations, like this. Like that, and then just add this to the loop and then close it. Okay, we'll set these aside. All right, now I have my big bead, and I want to show you how to attach these to the large bead. So I'm just using some heavy gauge copper colored aluminum wire. Aluminum wire comes in so many great colors. And it's so easy to work with. You can almost bend it by hand. And so what I'm going to do, another thing I like about it is it doesn't change color, and it doesn't tarnish. It's just aluminum that's a nice color. So I'm going to put this through my bead. And for what I'm doing here is I'm making this bead into a pendant, and I'm also making it able to have these dangles on the bottom. So for sure on this one I want to use these nice pliers with the bent side on them, and I'm just going to start by twisting this just a bit to get the curve going. And that back side really helps keep a really beautiful curve without damaging the wire, without flattening the wire. Okay, so I've got a really nice loop there. And you would want to use wire that is probably 16 or 18 gauge for this. You need to experiment with the types of wire sizes that you like and then go from there. But a 16 or 18 would certainly be strong enough. Okay, now that I have the loop made, I'm going to put it back on the round nose and then coil backwards just a bit, so that my loop comes directly out of the center of the wire. And I went a little bit too much, so I'm going to undo that just a little bit. So it looks like your wire is coming out of the middle. And then I'll just slide my bead up. And I want to trim that just a tiny bit because I've got too much wire sticking out. So I'll just use my wire cutters and trim this back just a little bit. You don't want that to get snagged on clothing. And I think I'll just twist it back. There we go. And then I can use flat nose pliers to straighten this out. And then I'll slide my bead down. Then on this end, what I need to do is gauge about how much wire I need to make another loop. So I'm going to trim this about 1 inch. Oh, I shot the loop out. And then I'll do the same thing on this end. I'm going to get my wire out of the way. And I'll take my round nose pliers again, and I'll just create a nice loop on the end. This time, since I've already cut my wire, I'm just going to spin it all the way up until it's on the bottom of the bead. So it's super snug. Okay, now I have a bead that has a loop on each end, and all I have to do is add a jump ring with my little dangles And I'm going to select kind of a larger jump ring this time. And I'll open that up with flat nose pliers. And I'll string all of these on, jump ring to jump ring. I'm going to put the black one in the middle just as a color accent, and because it's a different shape entirely than the other two. So I've created a little dangle charm, and I can just add that to the bottom loop. And now I have a nice pendant piece that is ready to make like a long necklace or pendant. So that is how you create little bitty dangles using head pins and eye pins. Next, let's take a look at wire wrapping of clay pieces. So this is a wire wrapped and pendant made by Carissa Nichols, and she used wire wrapping to actually, construct her hook there. This is wire wrapping over liquid Sculpey. So this is solid oven baked clay, and this is liquid clay, and they're both just a really nice way to finish off a piece to be used as a pendant. So let's take a look at how to do that. Now earlier when I did that, when I did this bead, I used, this is a heavier wire. This might be like 14 or 16. It's pretty heavy. And then this is more like an 18. And this is still aluminum wire, comes in lots and lots of colors. I got this from Beadalon. They've got just a huge selection of colors. My point is that the higher the number, the skinnier the wire, and the lower the number, the heavier the wire. So that's kind of important to know, when you're working with wire wrapping, and how much work you want it to be, to twist the piece into place. So I'm just going to start by straightening out my wire off the loop, and I don't want to take a lot off here because it's so easy to store it when it's looped up like this, but I'm just going to take a piece off and pull it with my fingers, to really get it going. So what I'm going to do is, now this is completely freestyle, me going off here freestyle. So I want to start on the back, and I want to create a loop that would go above the piece for a pendant loop. And I'm just going to make a loop like so, large enough that I know I can get, a jump ring or even a beaded chain through that, or not maybe a beaded one, but a thin chain. And then you can make this loop either by hand like I just did, or you could make it by using your round nose pliers. And then I'm just twisting extra wire around the tail. Just a couple twists, just to secure my loop in place and to make it really sort of neat looking, okay? Now my tail, I'm gonna trim that later. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't wasting a lot of wire. Then what I want to do is just kind of imagine how I want this to come out of my piece. I kind of like the pattern better down here in this Mokumegane piece, so I'm going to start up here, and I am going to go ahead and just trim some of this with these flat cutters. I'm going to trim probably, I hope, too much. Okay. Now this is where I want my loop to come out at the top, and next I want to secure that in place with a few coils. And you can see that this softer wire is going to be so much easier to work with by hand than the wire was that I used earlier. But they both serve their purpose. It just depends on which one you like best. So I'm going to coil around here a few times. And I went on either side of my looped piece to secure it into place. Next, I want to coil this around my pendant piece again a little bit. And then I'm going to come up from the back. Now, a lot of times to finish pieces, I really like a really tight coil like that. I think that looks really cool. It's a good way to tuck your end of your wire in so that it doesn't get snagged on your clothing. And so that's the way I want this piece to finish. So I'm going to go back under here to secure this in place. I'm just going to go under one strand. So everything is super secure and tight. Okay. And then I'm going to go out, I'm going to pull this end really tight and straight as possible. And next I'm going to start making that little cute loop on the end. So I want to take some round nose pliers and just start this going, just so I get a really round. Now this time I'm going to have the tail of the wire meet the wire. I'm not bringing the tail up to the side, above or below. I'm having it just kiss itself right there. And then I can pinch that loop. And if I just keep turning, it'll make a super flat, cute little coil where all the coils are lined up with each other. I can even raise this up a bit since this is such soft wire. And then I can just position that right where I want it, right on top. Okay, next I want to go back here and I want to trim my tail because I don't want that to show, and I don't want it to get, you know what, instead of trimming it, I'm going to coil that one up too, because I want it to lay super flat on the back of the design. And if I coil it up, it'll lay so flat that it won't get caught on clothing, and it also, I won't have to worry about cutting it and trimming it to a point that would stay tucked in. I don't have to worry about it staying tucked in now. I'll just coil it right up like that and make a cute little coil on the back. So this will be the front of my pendant. Now if you have any areas where the wire seems a little loose, you can tighten wire by grabbing it and kinking it like that. You twist your pliers just a bit, and that actually lengthens that point, and it takes the bulk out of the wire and makes it tighter to your piece. Plus it kind of creates a cute little kink that adds a little bit of design element to your wire wrapping. Okay, so now this piece is ready for a chain or for a jump ring, or for whatever you would like to use to create it into a pendant. Okay, finally I want to take a look at using pinch bails to make earrings. And pinch bails come in really handy with pieces that are all liquid Sculpey. Some of the molds that you're going to want to use with liquid Sculpey don't provide a hole, and so you have to figure out, well, am I going to drill a hole through my baked pieces, or am I going to connect them to their findings in some other way? And so I found that pinch bails are a really great way to secure liquid Sculpey pieces. The liquid Sculpey is just slightly flexible, and so the pinch bail will just really grab it. These pinch bails on this pair were actually, I had a hole that I did drill in and inserted the prongs of the pinch bails in there, so that's another way to use them. But I want to show you here, these don't have holes, so I'm going to show you how to use a pinch bail to finish these off. Now if you look at a pinch bail, it has an opening with some little prongs, and then they have a loop at the top. That's for adding your jewelry findings, so make sure you have pinch bails that have that loop. What I like to do is start a pilot hole with a needle tool in the baked liquid Sculpey piece, like so, and I'm just poking that all the way through. And that's going to be the pilot hole that I can aim these little prongs at. So I'm going to start by putting the prong in the front into that pilot hole, and then in the back I'll line the other prong up with that pilot hole. Okay, I have the little prongs in the pilot hole, but I want to secure them with flat nose pliers. So I'll just take my pliers and gently pinch this into place. And now you have a really, really secure little finding to add an earring to. And you could, if you want more length to the earring, you could add a series of jump rings, or you could just add the earring directly to the pinch bail. So I'm just going to open the loop with a flat nose plier on the bottom of the ear wire, and then I'll add the loop on the pinch bail to the ear wire, excuse me, and then close that loop. And there you have just a really beautiful earring design with, you know, not much difficulty. Poke the pilot hole like that, then insert the prongs, make sure it's lined up right in the middle, in the front and the back, and then smash the prongs into the liquid Sculpey, the baked liquid Sculpey. And then you can have a chance to kind of square this up once it's in place. But I think that's just a super really good design and a great way to finish off liquid Sculpey pieces like so, using pinch bails. Pinch bails come in lots of metal finishes. These are just sort of a standard silver. They come in different shapes and sizes. They also work, you can get big ones for pendants, small ones for earrings. You can get whatever you need to make it your own custom design. So I hope that these tips and tricks for making custom finished jewelry pieces have been helpful, and I would love to see what you've made by using #Sculpey and posting your pieces to social media so that we can find them.